Call the meeting to order, the meeting of the Planning Commission, June 14th. May we have the roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Badami?
Here.
Commissioner Hudes?
Here.
Commissioner Hanson?
Here.
Commissioner Janoff?
Here.
Commissioner Birch?
Here.
Vice Chair Kane?
Here.
Chair O'Donnell.
Here. Would you all join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Commissioner Hanson, Commissioner Janoff is going to, I forgot who I asked. Commissioner, who was it? Okay, Janoff. Commissioner Janoff will lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Yeah, I know, I got them. I just forgot who I asked. All right, so may we have any subcommittee reports? I know we had a subcommittee meeting today, and we may have had others. Vice Chair Kane, I think you're going to report on the CDAC.
CDAC is the Conceptual Development Advisory Meeting. I was there with Commissioner Badami and Chair O'Donnell. We had one item on the agenda, actually two, that we also had to elect the chair and a vice chair, and Commissioner Badami was elected vice chair. Councilmember Jensen was elected chair. The item on our agenda was 101 South Santa Cruz Avenue, requesting a preliminary review of plans to demolish an existing building, which is the post office, and to construct a mixed-use development with below-grade parking, 2 stories of residential above 1-story retail. The CDAC gives advice, listens to the applicant, dialogues with the applicant, outlines any obvious issues that may confront the applicant. In this case, it was a 3-story building abutting up to the town park. Certainly the vitality that it might bring could be desirable, but we reviewed things like maintain a building scale that is consistent with the town's small-scale image. Also, very important that views be protected, especially from the park. It was a good meeting, and I felt it was very constructive.
I might just add from that meeting, factually, that the lease on the property to the post office expired last year. It has been extended for 5 years, but may be terminated upon 2 years' notice. So the post office seems to move somewhat slowly, and you can imagine the applicant doesn't want to wait around forever. So that may be part of the reason we had the discussion today, to try to give them some guidance. Commissioner Badami, do you have anything to add?
I would say that we also talked about the 2 stories of residential above retail, being that some of the units may be approximately 3,000 square feet. So we talked about perhaps unmet needs, such as flats, meeting seniors and millennials' needs, and also concerns with parking and circulation, as well as how it might relate to the shutting down of the on-ramp onto 17 at that location. And we also talked about the sense of place and how important it was to that community at this location.
Thank you. Any other subcommittee reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to verbal communications. I have one card at the moment on verbal communications, and that's Angelia Dora, who I also heard from earlier today.
Hi, Angelia Dorner, proud resident of the Almond Grove. When I was at the CDAC meeting earlier, Mr. Schultz was sitting across from me in the aisle. He came in and I saw that he was reading some kind of a legal brief, and it sure looked from my auditor's eyes of being able to read upside down that it was the North 40. And I just couldn't read much more because I needed a new pair of contact lenses. But just wanted to I know you're not allowed to answer anything, but hopefully that will be shared with us as to what is going on. Thank you.
Without answering anything, I can tell you that I fully expect some mention of it more clearly later in the meeting. Good. Okay. Okay, so that's the only verbal communication I have on matters not on the agenda. Now we have consent items. We have two matters on the consent agenda, but they could be pulled if anybody requests that. The first is the approval of the minutes of May 24th, and the second is a conditional use permit for 17 1/2 North Santa Cruz Avenue. That has requested a continuance to the June 28th meeting. So unless there's a question as to one or the other, I could entertain a motion for both. Yes.
I just wanted to comment, I was not present for the May 24th meeting, but I've reviewed the entirety of the tape for the meeting as well as the minutes and the notes that went along with it, so I feel comfortable voting on the matter.
Okay, we had the same issue today, and I'm going to defer to the attorney for a second, but my understanding is you do not have to be present to approve the minutes. You do not even have to go over the video and all that. You do have to have read the minutes and not have any comments or questions. Is that correct?
You can if that's what you want to. I prefer that you actually just, if we have the ability to have a majority, which we have, and you haven't reviewed the tape, then I would rather have you abstain since you weren't at the meeting and haven't had the ability to do it. When we don't have that full majority is when I'll let, because there's no legal requirement, like you said, you can just review the minutes because you're not verifying what was actually said or wasn't said, you're just verifying that they are the minutes and approval of them. So whichever you feel more comfortable with doing.
We had that today at the CDAC. We would have only had two people who had been present at the meeting when the minutes were made. Clearly, in that case, you really need to have more people, and everybody had read and digested the minutes. So under those circumstances,
Then-
everybody felt comfortable. But I just want everybody to know, you don't legally have to be present to approve the minutes.
That's fine. I did feel it was incumbent upon me to review the entire tape since it's being continued to the June 28th meeting, but I realize that that's not relevant to the minutes.
Well, and I think what you did was the right thing to do. I'm just talking about the legal point. Okay. So we have the two matters. Can I have a motion? Commissioner Badami.
I move to approve the consent items consisting of item number 1, the approval of the minutes of May 24th, 2017, and item number 2, 17 1/2 North Santa Cruz Ave, continuing the item to the June 28th, 2017 Planning Commission meeting.
Is there a second? Vice Chair Kane.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? It passes unanimously. All right, so that gets us to really the only matter on the agenda other than the conclusion, which is other business, and that is 30 Roberts Road and 6th Forest Avenue, architecture and site application and a subdivision application requesting approval to demolish one multifamily dwelling with 3 units and one single-family dwelling, to construct one multiple family dwelling with 4 units and merge the 2 lots upon which the buildings are into one lot. May I have a staff report?
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commission. This project came before you on March 22nd and has been continued with specific direction from the Commission to address privacy concerns at the rear, to address massing and scale, to better express the units as individual units, and to incorporate an additional guest parking space into the project. So the applicants revised the project and has added landscaping at the rear to address privacy, has taken off the 3rd story, which results in a decrease in massing and scale, has incorporated into the front facade particularly individual articulation of the units, and has also incorporated an additional parking space. The architect and the applicant have responded both with 2 different letters of justification, one to the Commission's comments and then another to the architectural consultant, the town's architectural consultant, who was really looking at the cow wall, how to soften the cow wall, is advising to use glass or wood, and then also was looking at lowering the ceiling heights to decrease the height even further. And the architect, again, has responded specifically to those in Exhibit 19. So this evening, the Commission should review the project and determine whether or not it meets the direction given in March, and if so, take whatever actions are appropriate to approve the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of staff? Commissioner Hanson?
I just wanted to confirm, I went through the materials from our last meeting, but the project is not asking for any waivers of any codes or policies that we have written. Other than, there was there's some discussion about bulk and mass.
That's correct.
Okay. So, and then the other question that I had was we directed the applicant to meet with the neighbors to address privacy concerns. And I noted that they made a change to the landscaping, but I didn't see anything in our packet regarding an actual evidence of meeting that went over that. Nor were there any public comments. So was that because they weren't given, or?
Right, staff didn't receive public comments, but the applicant can speak to discussions with the neighbors. And I guess I could also clarify, when there was one less parking space, you'll recall in the last meeting, there was a finding for that you would have to make, but now that it meets the guest parking, that finding's no longer in your findings. So that, with this alteration, then there's no exception for that. Thanks.
I have one question. Prior to taking off the third level, what was the height of the building?
We actually have that in the, so the maximum height was 34 feet 11 inches, and it's now 33 feet 4 inches.
All right, so.
And that's the maximum.
Right, so although a floor was taken off, the height only came down a little over a foot?
Yeah, you could say that the maximum height, certainly. And I think the applicant will speak to the height as it varies with different roofs and different sections of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? If not, I will ask the applicant to come forward, and the applicant will have up to 10 minutes to present the matter.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Tom Sloan. I'm the project's architect. And I just want to go through a few slides that help tell the story of where we've been and where we've gone here. So again, this slide I showed last time, it is the neighborhood along Roberts Road. I find it quite unique in that it does have office and commercial and industrial and a whole wide variety of residential uses just right on this little strip of Roberts Road. That's not the clicker.
Is that right? Oh.
We'll find out. Here, this again is the photograph of the site. It's on the corner of Roberts Road, and here's again a rendering of the previous design. I put it up here on the wall as well, showing you where we were. So I quickly just simply want to go over the privacy concerns for the neighbors. So what we ended up doing is along here are some existing established podocarpus. It's a evergreen, drought resistant, and what we're doing is filling in and adding more along the edge to sort of create a screening for the neighbors here on the east that had the biggest concerns about the privacy. We're also saving more of the trees. A few of these existing trees we were removing before, and you probably noticed when you drive down Roberts Road, you sort of right now the story poles are set back and they're hidden by the trees. Kind of give some screening, so we want to retain that screening as well. So this is a quick rendering of what it might look like from with the new changes. If you recall, in the previous design, this was a stairwell and a lot of cow wall. Again, 3 stories. We're now just down to 2 stories, and it's a lot more building mass or building without glass. The glass that is along here is all diffused glass of some sort. When the podocarpus get put in, of course, it's going to heavily screen the view into the project. We also introduced, let me go back a second, we also introduced these large overhangs as kind of a brow to prevent light from going up. And then we have a minimal amount of, these are all, each one of these is a bedroom, so we kind of need these for egress. So the other thing that was a concern was to reduce the overhang and integrate the third story under the roof. We eliminated the roof altogether rather than sort of changing the design to have a pitched roof with dormers, something like that. This also illustrates, whereas, what is this little pointer thing? So these roofs go up at a peak, and then this red line represents the original height of the building. And so whereas this distance here is about 7 feet, sometimes a little more than 7 feet of reduction, over here where the roof peaks to where the roof peaks up, it's 1'7", so a difference. So that's, but we are creating, next slide, to address the massing, what we've done is modulated the roof with a sloping roof. This is something that was brought up a lot at the previous meetings and things that we went over with a few of the neighbors. The modulated roofs here, create an area in here that is roughly 15% of the building mass, and on the flip side, on the facing the neighbors, it's a 20% reduction in mass. And what I did to calculate that is I just calculated this area in here and versus the area below. So we wanted to introduce these distinctive individual shapes because what they do is, last time it was very hard to read that there were 4 units. There were a lot of comments that it looked like an office building. Nice office building, but it wasn't a residence. And so the rhythm here, this even rhythm and modulation going up and down sort of creates a distinctive look of the separate townhouses. And so that's also what we did here. So we also reduced the, let's see, I forgot to mention that the advantage of having 3 stories is it enables us to distribute some of the interior space, and that's why on the backside we had 20-foot high double-story space, and we've eliminated the double-story space and opted for a 12-foot high ceiling in here in the lower end, and then we have a 10-foot plate on the upper, although in the front bedrooms they do have the pitched roofs that pitch up a little bit higher. And you're probably, we are very well aware that 12 feet is sort of a generous amount of space. However, the townhouses next door, I've been in there, went in there to meet some of the neighbors. They have 2-story spaces as well, that are, I'm not sure how tall, probably 17, 18 feet, maybe taller. And we'll probably hear about that. Okay, yeah, with a lower plate line, I'll add, So, forgive my, this is supposed to be a 2 here, not a 3. But this represents the reduction in floor area. Like Unit 1 went from 3,140 down to 2,850, and Unit 2, we knocked off about 150 square feet. They were the smaller units. So these are now ending up around 2,600 square feet, which is as I stated in the beginning, we wanted to have the higher end living rather than sort of the lower end of living in multiple dwellings. Keep people off the hillside. Real quickly, you know, we're putting in 4 guest parking, and each unit has its own private garage that accesses directly into the unit. We also moved. The exit out was here. Larry Cannon, the consulting architect, suggested we move it. We did. We moved it over here to this corner with the elevator, and there'll be an accessible route provided there. So the proposed design here clearly has, I keep pressing the wrong button. 4 distinctive units. The stucco here in this rendering does show the same color, but we're going to have different shades at Larry Cannon's, the consulting architect's recommendation. We're going to have different colors so that it really starts to break up the mass. These have, the entryways are all real clear. They go up to the unit, so I think it now is clear that there's four units, not 3 or looking like an office building. We still plan on having this project built and being the first LEED Platinum building in Los Gatos. We're working with Living Homes as well as getting bids from other people that can build these homes in a remote spot, bring them and assemble them in a matter of days, which really is great for the neighbors. They don't have to hear all this pounding for months and on end. So that concludes my presentation, right at 0.
All right, we'll probably have some questions for you, Mr. Sloan. We'll start with Commissioner Birch.
I was unable to find in the drawings the location of any mechanical units, HVAC system, whatever you're going to be using. Where will those be? I don't see anything.
We're planning on using, it'll be down in the basement, and we're using hydronic heating. So we're not going to be putting any ducting through. We're going to be using the hydronic radiant.
Radiant floor, so you'll have
Yeah.
tubing that goes to all the floor. Will that also be a similar cooling style?
They are making that now.
Not as efficient,
It's
though.
yeah, it isn't. And there was a project on I can't think of the name of it that I visited that uses the radiant heat in the ceiling, and then the cool air drops down. It's pretty experimental at this point, so we may not do that.
Can I just as a follow-up question / comment would be, is your intent then to place a unit on the roof?
No.
Behind the units? Where would you place a cooling unit if you have, I mean, I understand
Yeah,
we're going for the heating,
we weren't really planning on it. We are planning solar panels for the roof, and they'll be in the back portion where it's flat.
So are you planning on no cooling?
Yeah.
I forgot.
No, I don't know that we can we do that?
Wait a second.
Yeah, so that would, the small duct system. Yeah, so, we haven't got that far yet. We have plenty of space to put all this down below grade, and
Okay, we're going to get back to that discussion because then we're going to talk about exhausting. But I think at the end of the discussion, after we hear public testimony, it might be you that I want to talk to. So
yeah, we did talk about a small duct, high-velocity small duct system, which is, these little tubes that run throughout and force air at a higher rate. We just haven't nailed it down yet.
okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hudis?
Yeah, thank you. I had some questions about the cow wall panels and the curved light well, or the curved facade on the east and on the west side of the building that goes around the elevator. And so one of the concerns that was raised was about the light coming from the building. And in your response on June 5th, you this is Exhibit 19. You say regular glazing and window units emit much more light than cowl wall panels. So my question is, how much more light?
Can you see this?
Yeah. Okay.
If this was glass,
So,
does
okay.
does that illustrate it well
It's
enough for you?
helpful. However, I think that there's a lot more area of that panel in your new design. I looked at the size of the window, and I just, with my little ruler, estimated that at least on the east side of the building, there's 2.8 times the area of the previous windows,
Previous windows.
of the previous design, the windows in the previous design. And so while it may not emit as much light, of course, the light wouldn't be coming horizontally, it would be coming vertically. The area is almost 3 times as much in the new design. And I know Mr. Cannon made a comment about that. I'm wondering what your response is to that, because it does seem as though there may be more light with the new design.
Okay. Well, I was hoping that this little illustration sort of makes it very clear. I can't really speak to Larry's cowl wall phobia, but it's Class A rated. It's virtually indestructible. It's a wonderful wall. It enables us to get a lot of leeway and green points and things for our LEED certification. If we use, Larry did create a little sketch. We did meet with him one-on-one here before. We recommended that to try to communicate with him. I didn't bring my demonstration here. I did give him the specs, the technical specifications, which the staff does have. It's pretty technical, so it's a little above kind of a conversation here. I thought, doing this little demonstration with a pretty high intensity light, and it's going to be a lot less. As soon as I move it away from the light, you don't even see it. I've been working with CalWall for 20 years. It's when the sun comes in, it refracts the light, and it's kind of a little magical, but yet it blocks the light from leaving. It's going to be very kind to the neighbors. And then we also are putting in, the green screen. So we're growing a vine. A little brain dead on what it is, but it's fast-growing, wonderful smelling flowers, and it should. I've seen these things; they grow quite rapidly.
Okay, thank you. I may have some more questions
Okay.
after we hear public testimony on that.
Commissioner Janoff?
Just to follow up on the cowl wall, did you meet with the neighbors? Did you meet with the neighbors with your new design?
Yes, we had, I think, 3 distinctive meetings. I think all of them were at my office before we submitted anything. And yeah.
So did the neighbors have any comment about the increased use of the cowl wall material, particularly on the east side of the structure, which faces the closest residential properties?
They may have. I honestly don't recall, and I don't doubt, but I'm going to check it myself. It was my impression that we reduced the amount of cowl wall, and so.
It looks like the amount of cowl wall was reduced from the front elevation, but increased on the side. So that anyway, we'll ask the neighbors.
Yeah. Okay.
Commissioner Hanson?
Also, more questions about the Calwell. I think you answered the question when you were answering Commissioner Hudis's question, but how important is the Calwell to the LEED certification? And I have a couple other questions.
We can always find, hunt down other means of getting that certification. I haven't tried to yet. To me, the CalWells, and we're doing it as with the product they call CalCurve. So I think how important to me, it's very important.
Okay, so you have different ways.
It provides daylighting. You don't have to turn your lights on during the day. When you have a deep, long unit like that, it's nice to get light in from into the unit.
And then, kind of related to that, with the green screen, I wondered what impact that would have on the ability for there to be the daylighting. I mean, because it seems to me that would block some of the sunlight.
It does, and here's how I might sort of explain it in a kind of a layman terms. We've all stayed at a hotel and stayed up late, and then drawn the curtains closed so that it's completely pitch black. And the minute somebody cracks that open, the light just comes flooding in, and then sort of exponentially as you begin to open it, it's less light. So what we think. And I've done this experiment before with the skylights and things. We've put things on top of on the roof and looked up, and you can't even see them. So it's not even going to cast a shadow. You just have to trust me on that. I mean.
Okay. Well, one final question. So you said you've been doing this Calwell for 20 years.
Probably
have
more.
you done this quantity of Calwell in this type of setting?
This is my first CalCurve.
This many small houses around.
First CalCurve. We've done the wall product, the straight wall, like we initially had in the stairway at the corner.
In a residential neighborhood.
Yeah, I have it in my house everywhere. And many houses, Los Altos Hills, they love it because the light doesn't go up like skylights normally do. So it's a pretty nifty product.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Vice Chair Kane?
Mr. Sloan, can you put up A-3.0? The basement.
Oh, yeah. That one. That one?
No.
No.
A-3.0.
I don't. On this one, right?
Yeah.
Good, Mary. Good.
Commissioner Kane, confirm you wanted A-3.0 and not A-3.1?
A-3.0.
Okay, I have it right here.
Keep you on your toes.
That was the garage that I had up there on the.
In the middle of the garage, to the right of the center line, there's a notation that says 10% slope.
Right here?
Yeah, what does that mean?
That's the, when you're ramping down into the garage, what we're doing is we're ramping down, and then right along here, you'll see a drain. So it is a slope of 10%, meaning.
So that's an extension of the ramp to get down there.
Yes. 10% would be an incline, well, it's a 1 in 10 ratio.
Right.
horizontal 10, up 1.
It continues further on, up and to the right of that. And now it says there's still a 10% slope, the other way, to the right. That one.
Right there?
No, that one.
Yeah.
We still have a 10% slope at that point?
At this time, yes.
I'm not envisioning that as to why you would need that or why you would park cars that way.
We are, we have to get low enough at this point. This over here, it's flatter, because in general, from this part of the lot, it rises up about 3.5 feet from over here.
So the floor doesn't really flatten out. And what I'm
It
really
does it when you're parked. You know, that has to be flat.
parking zones are
yeah,
flat.
the parking zones.
Look
are
at the
flat.
handicap zone
Yeah,
where
that's
the wheelchair. Right next to that, it says a 2% slope.
Yes.
Is a slope where a handicapped person would be getting out in a wheelchair?
Yeah, 2% is adequate for an accessible parking space for a wheelchair.
Okay.
You know, it's very difficult to even recognize a 2% slope. 3%, 4%, you start to
I just thought it was
feel
odd having any slope with a
little bit.
wheelchair. The elevators, there's 4 of them. I was wondering, this may not be the matter before us, but when you put in 4 elevators in these units, who's responsible for maintenance and inspection? There's an elevator in my building, and all elevators have the code certified to date. Whose responsibility is it for the maintenance and inspection of these 4 elevators?
The individual elevators are in the individual units, and those will be, I'm sure, set up as the responsibility for maintenance for each individual owner.
It's the owner's responsibility for inspection and maintenance, is what you're saying.
Yes. However, there's a 5th elevator, and that will be the homeowners as a group will be responsible. You know, I'm sure that's when we set up the CC&Rs.
That'd be part of the, what, HOA or?
Yeah, the HOA, that has to happen, you know, if we can get approved, and then that gets drafted up by some attorneys.
The 2 parking places on the bottom, as you come down the driveway, have units on both sides of the driveway. No, yes.
Yes.
Yes. What are those?
Those are storage and mechanical rooms.
There's only 2 of them.
Yeah, this unit has a large storage area in it. Rather than having it walled off, this will actually be one of the partners that's developing the site.
You said mechanical. Is that, what mechanicals would you put in there?
How we're going to condition the space, like, you know, we're not using furnace per se, but
Could that room be used for what Commissioner Birch was asking about?
yes. Not for an air conditioner condenser unit. Those generally have to be outside and separated. It's possible we could put it in there if we had the right ventilation.
All right. Going back to Larry Cannon's letter, now I think this is his second letter. Under his recommendations, he suggests you reduce that first floor ceiling from 12 to 10 and the second from 10 to 9. This is back to getting mass and scale, neighborhood compatibility, et cetera. And he goes on to say, yeah, you know, you could even take it down to 9 feet first floor, 8 feet second floor. Why was that not acceptable?
That's a very good question, huh? I work for clients, and I would like to speak for them if I can. These units are going to be very, very expensive to build, and so the sales price has to be sort of commensurate with a buyer not buying a typical sort of 1,500 square foot, 8-foot ceiling project, that are everywhere. I think somewhere in there, getting down into the 8 and 9 foot range is just, it's probably going to we'll just have to walk away from the project because it won't pencil out at that point with the sales price. So we have discussed if push comes to shove and to work with the neighbors and we would lower the lower floor. We'd knock off a foot, maybe a foot and a half, and after that it's too much, I think. Again, I think you'll be hearing from Park and his group. He kind of whispered in my ear earlier today, just when he came in, would like to see that 12-foot knocked down. And my response is, they have ceilings that are, I'm pretty certain, over 12 feet high. They're double-story spaces. They're on a slope. Yes, like the upper floor, it starts lower and works its way up to 20. But
you and I have walked that neighborhood.
Pardon?
You and I have walked that neighborhood. And
I've walked it.
There's nothing like this. Wherever he lives, I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I'm driving at is, Mr. Cannon, the commission, others said, get it down. Neighborhood compatibility, mass and scale, get it down. And I exaggerate to make the point. You took the third floor off and made it taller. I mean, I don't see the point of taking off the third floor and then going for the high ceilings. It's like I failed to communicate, or we failed to communicate, or Larry failed to communicate. It's a mass and scale issue. Now, clearly you've got monetary issues. I've got preservation of neighborhood issues. I don't know how to make those, I guess you don't know how to make those compatible either.
I don't want to, I have to do it though. Okay, so it's turned.
I don't believe there's a
I was gonna-
question. I'm not sure there's a question pending, so let's ask commissioners if they have a question that's actually pending, or otherwise we can get to the public testimony.
Maybe
part of it.
maybe I misunderstood the question, but I understood the question to be, why can't you lower it, basically?
Yes.
And you were going to tell us why you felt you had
It's an
raised
em-
the ceiling on one instance, and and Vice Chair Kane is saying, why couldn't you lower it? And I think you were going to tell us why you felt you couldn't, and hopefully it's more than what you told us before. That is, maybe it doesn't pencil out.
It doesn't. There's a point where we keep pushing it down, and we wonder if this project, with its large open space, the
question was,
proportions
if
are
you-
not going to be livable.
Have it lower before when you had 3 stories, and then you raise it when you only have 2. Is your answer because losing the 3rd story, then you've got to make it up some other way by making the units more expensive?
No. Okay, let me start kind of a little bit at the beginning. The original project had 20-foot high ceilings. Okay, a mix of ceilings, but the main living space was 20 feet high. In lieu, when we removed the 3rd story, we inserted it into that double-story volume of space, and then nudged it up a little bit to about 2 feet to create. That's all it went up, 2 feet at the lower floor, and what's making this thing, there's this perception like the maximum height it only moved 1'7", but that's at the request of the neighbors and everybody. Let's put a pitched roof on this thing. Originally I think we would have. It makes it look better, to be honest. You start to get the 4 different units. If we start pushing that ceiling down into the 8-foot range, there's nothing going to be nice about this. They're not going to. We have to sell these at a higher price point, and it's People
Okay, I
expect
think-
things, the higher
I think you've answered
ceilings.
the question now twice, so that's fine. Commissioner Janoff?
So presumably on the upper story, the focus on the higher height ceilings is on the master suite area, because that's generally where that height would be appreciated. But as you've shown in the current drawings, the minimum height in the master bedroom area is 10 feet, and the roof slopes up.
13, I
I'm
think, somewhere.
guessing, okay, to 13 feet. So effectively, you've got extraordinary high ceilings relative to your previous design in the master bedroom areas, which is the part of your design that reaches those maximum heights. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? If not, thank you. We'll hear now from others, and then you'll have a chance to conclude. You'll have 5 minutes to conclude. I have some cards here for people who want to speak. If anybody else has not submitted a card and wants to, please do so. First card I have here is Angelia Dorr. Couldn't finish your coffee.
Angelia Dorner, proud resident of the Almond Grove. I've got to turn in my card later, so I'm not always the first person up here. I was pleasantly surprised when I looked at the changes for this compared to the prior project. Primarily, I was thinking of the kinds of things that we wished for in some of the North 40 plans. The underground parking for residential units is fabulous. The fact that they've added the guest parking underground as well, I think, is fabulous. Most people who have been talking building residential say that that's not possible and it won't pencil. But somehow they've been able to make that happen. As far as the third story, I understand the rationale somewhat. I think that it can be reduced from current, but the change in the roof line from the original thing is so different than the first one that it's, from a perception standpoint, to me, it does not appear as ominous as it did before. As far as 8-foot ceilings, I wouldn't want 8-foot ceilings. That's all I can say. Elevators for the garage through the second story, that was something else that everyone wants for unmet needs as far as seniors and other kinds of situations, as well as disabilities. The master and the 2 bedrooms, they each have their own bathroom, which I think is conducive to 2 professional people being able to live, cohabitate in one of these things, and then have 1 guest room between the 2 of them. I think that's addressing some unmet needs from a millennial standpoint. I like the fact that they've maintained more of the mature trees around the perimeter, which helps preserve the existing streetscape. And since I'm not a neighbor, I can't speak as to what they've done privacy-wise is enough for them, but I do like the fact that they have attempted to do that. And the individuality, I think, is actually pretty good compared to what it was before. Before, it just looked like one big old brown mass of stucco, sort of like look like it had just been dumped there. So anyway, I just wanted to say that it's directionally correct as far as I see as towards going through unmet needs with our limited available land for more development that we're going to be facing, as well as the LEED certification, which I think this is the first one I've seen. And the modular construction, I think it's funny that we used to call manufactured housing a modified mobile home, but it's going to be interesting to see how this is built or put together. I think will really be a novel thing to look at. And so I just am overall encouraged for the willingness of any developer to address your comments the way that they have, because there have been so many recently that haven't addressed any of them. And have to go through so many processes and stuff. So I just wanted to sort of pipe in those comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I have another card here, and I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce this correctly. Art Vaclowns? I'm sorry, I've mispronounced it.
I wonder if this thing works.
It does, but we'll have to help you, I think.
Thank you very much.
Park Miller's the Who's? This guy's.
Thank you very much. My name is Art Vailonis. I live 211 Oak Meadow Drive, and this structure actually is just over my fence. We have definitely trees and everything like that. So, and I'm really, in general, was surprised and happy when we were invited to architect's office and see the new designs. I just want to stress out that we didn't see any numbers at that point, so we didn't know what actually the reduction was at that moment, and turns out it just a little bit above 1 foot. So if I look from my perspective, this is just what I see, 1 foot, because at that point the roof is ascending, not descending, so I have 1 foot reduction. So I don't speak from Roberts Road, I speak from my view, it's 1 foot. And I don't think it's really a big reduction in this case. So it's really low reduction. And I definitely agree with Vice Chair Kane about mass and scale. And last time we talked about it specifically to reduce mass and scale. From my point of view, it's not reduced. So from my point of view, I'm getting 4.5% reduction. So there is some reduction, 1 foot. So, but I don't think that should be enough. And to say that we have 20-foot ceilings in our house, so our houses look like this.
You need to take the mic.
Take the mic, please. Just pull the mic out.
Okay, but that's our house on the right side. Okay. So it's much smaller, and we still have 20-foot ceiling. So there should be some magic probably in these houses to be done that they could have also 20-foot ceiling with their structure, right? So we don't have any magic in that small house. We still have good high ceiling. So I don't know where is the problem to do that. And so that's one thing, first priority. The mass and scale wasn't reduced enough from my point of view. Then about this cal walls, I'm a physicist. I work at Stanford University. When somebody tells me that there is light comes in and doesn't come out, that kind of makes strange for me from optical point of view, because if it comes in and doesn't come out, then you don't have light coming in, or you have light coming out. So if it comes in, it should come out, because this is how the light travels. So you cannot catch it, but you can release it. So that's a very expensive thing. I don't think Calwell actually makes these kind of things. So you have light everywhere. If they want light from the sun coming in, definitely the light will go out at the same rate, and the same transmission number will be there. Of course, it will be diffused light. I agree. So this flashlight will be diffused, but in general, it will be there. And last point, Los Altos Hills and Cal Walls, those houses are separated so well apart each other that I don't think there is a problem for Cal Wall.
All right, thank you. Let's see if there's a question for you.
Sure.
Mr. Birch.
Yeah. Can I, Sally, can we zoom in so I can see this just a little bit better for my questions?
Page 10 in staff report, if you get it, or page 3 of
Well, just so everyone in the audience, though, can
Okay.
join along. Oh, wow, that's so much better. These are great for right here, horrible for there. So, sir, to make sure that I understand properly, on the top, you are the house to the right, correct?
It's on, I think.
It's on, just hold it up.
This is our house.
Okay. So in discussing the reduction of the height, I would like to hear then your recommendation of what kind of height reduction would wind up feeling like the mass and scale had been reduced for you.
Well, to be fair, from my point of view, of
Thank
course,
you,
I would
Sally.
like to have the same height as my house, right? So
Okay.
probably that would be fair. I wouldn't complain because that's my house already is this size. But reduction, as the Canon group suggested, to go down from 12 to 10 and from 10 to 9, depending on which floor, I think that would be a really acceptable solution. So that reduces another, 3 feet down. So I think if this goes down 3 feet, that should be, well, if you look at the design group's recommendations, they show how that will look like, and I think it will look like nicer. I didn't mention that we were also on a downhill slope. So we will see this even higher.
Sure, I understand completely. And then also, just to clarify, your home is on the side of one of, I'm just going to call them the opaque window towers?
It's a cowl wall. wall.
I
yes.
know what it is, but I'm just, for the sake of,
Sure.
you are adjacent to one of those, correct?
Right.
Okay.
To be fair, there are trees,
Yes.
but trees are not a wall. So
All right,
you
thank
should
you
be
very
aware
much.
that light is leaking anyway.
I understand, thank you.
Yes,
Regarding the cowl wall, you didn't comment whether you have an issue with the cowl wall. You talked about the physics of light, which I appreciate, but is there a specific issue that you are raising regarding the cowl wall or the amount of cowl wall material?
Well, my issue is that.
where's the microphone now?
Oh, this one. Okay.
Can't take the microphone home.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, the issue is that, you come out on your backyard and there is always light. I would call it light pollution, as San Jose already has it, and they try to deal with it because they cannot look with their telescope into the stars, and they have to install special lights. So I call it's a light pollution, so it's a nuisance. It's maybe wouldn't bother me, or maybe it will, and depending on what I feel during that day or something like that. But it's a nuisance, I think, in general.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
The next card I have is Park Miller.
Hi, I'm Park Miller. I live at 327 Oak Meadow Drive and been a member of the Regency Court Homeowners Association for 25 years now. I'm also a practicing architect in this community. I wanted to acknowledge that Tom and his group have been quite communicative compared to other developers that I've been involved with, and we have had several chances to interact with them. I wanted to say, as a positive, underground parking is an excellent idea. Of course, it raises the base elevation of the house a little bit above what it might normally be if it was on grade, and that would make it more important that we have reasonable floor-to-ceiling heights. It was a big concession to eliminate the third floor, but having the 12 feet floor to floor plus another 10 feet plus a sloped ceiling, I think is more than necessary to create a spacious and appropriate type of design. In fact, I'm a little worried that you'd lose too much intimacy if you have the whole floor at 12 feet elevation. Unless you have very large spaces, it's going to appear too voluminous. In regard to the cowl wall, I think he did reduce that quite a bit. If you look at the elevations on the wall behind you, I think the bottom plan shows the old cowl wall, which was very extensive, and now they've made it into a more contained curving cowl wall. One could also make part of that opaque to reduce the amount of light, maybe have some kind of opaque band that's between the upper and lower portions that might help some. And but our primary concern is the roof is, as you can see from these profiles, the houses in our development have the low plate line facing the property line, the roofs receding toward the property line. The proposal has the tallest element facing the property line. I would like to see perhaps maybe the roofs oriented a little bit different so the lower part faces the neighbors. And I had suggested to Tom that maybe instead of this sawtooth pattern, which looks somewhat industrial, maybe that the orientation of the center roofs could be turned like 90 degrees and then create a little more interest in the composition.
Thank you. Your time is up, but we'll have some questions for you. So, Commissioner Hudes.
Yeah, thank you. I'm interested in the alternative roof design. Could you go into a little bit more detail on the idea you were just talking about in terms of different orientation for the roof?
When we visited Tom's office, I suggested to him that now that the architectural consultant wanted this to be experienced more as individual units rather than a more integrated whole, that perhaps you could use the sloped forms on the end units and maybe turn those forms opposite, so you'd have like a straight line type composition, so it would break up this feeling of the sawtooth nature of it. And Tom felt they had to have the sloped roofs for the type of construction they're using, and he said he would consider it, and I think he told me earlier that the town's architectural consultant didn't like that idea, so it was just an idea I had at the time that we were meeting.
Go ahead, Commissioner Hudes.
I could follow up. Did you discuss the alternative of having the roof slope in the opposite direction? So there would be 4 slopes, but they would be facing exactly the opposite.
Oh, well, you know, it was just one meeting in his office, and what I suggested, if you look at the front elevation, I think it's on the wall behind you, on the upper panel, that those 2 angled roofs that are in the center could be turned so the lowest portion of them would be at the street, and they go up as they recede from the street and then return back down toward the back. But, you know, it was just a suggestion. I hadn't taken any further action on that.
Thank you.
Other questions? I have a question, at least. Your concern, in part at least, is simply the height of the building. And a suggestion has been made by the town's architect that the first floor could be lowered and the second floor could be lowered. Mr. Sloan, while somewhat sympathetic, particularly to lowering the first floor by as much as a foot or a foot and a half, I know you're a practicing, I know it well that you're a practicing architect, and could you, assuming for the moment that the general height, floor to ceiling in the second floor, is 12 feet, but it does slope up the way that roof slopes, but let's forget that for a moment. We've heard discussion tonight why 12 feet is important. What is your experience with, let's say, 12 feet versus 10 or versus 10 and a half or whatever?
Well, 8 foot appears quite standard and squished, especially for this market. 10 foot is rather generous. Our units have a basic 9 foot floor to ceiling height. They have some sloped ceilings so that the first floor extends up for a higher volume, but there's no additional floor above that. My feeling is they could get away with 10 to 10 and a half feet on the first floor and it'd make it quite nice and comfortable. And, you know, if they used a basic 8.5 to 9 feet on this upper level, I think they would have a very saleable unit.
All right, well, I appreciate your opinion. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Park Miller. Okay, the next card I have is, and again, I apologize if I mispronounce it, Paul Veith.
Hi, my name is Paul Veith. I live at 307 Oak Meadow Drive. I'm a couple doors down from Art, so my unit would face the back of this as opposed to Art facing the side of it. I've lived there for 20 years. And I'd like to first thank the Planning Commission for the thoroughness in reviewing this project. I'm quite impressed by that. I'd like to just start by thanking for that. And Vice Chair Kane already made my points for me. So, if my math is correct, I saw the height for the first time tonight, and I was expecting when the third floor came off, 8 feet would come off, right? Would be logical. So, and it's only 1.5 feet. If my math is correct, if you had the first floor at the 9-foot ceiling and the second floor at 8 feet on one side and changed the slope a little bit so that it only went up to, say, 12, the overall height would go down 6 feet. So to me, a 9-foot ceiling is still generous because that's what we have, and it appears you get extra value out of that as they're looking for in the price. And if the upstairs were to go from 8 feet on one side to I believe the math would be 14 on the other side, that would lower the overall height by 6 feet, and that would make a huge difference in the privacy impact on me and our neighbors. So that's my main point. Second point is Ms. Birch about the light. How much light is enough, and how much light is a nuisance, right? If it's a whole wall, it's probably a nuisance. If it's a regular size window, it's probably not a nuisance. So I don't have a problem with that wall. It's probably just too big, right? It's just too much light to the point whether it's a nuisance. And then the only other point I had was I was very impressed with the change in the facade. It looks much more like residences. I'm very pleased with that change. The only question I had was the plantings that were shown in the back that would give us privacy. Is there a requirement that those be, tall trees at the beginning as opposed to planting short trees that take 20 years to actually give us the privacy that's intended in the renderings? So.
Are there any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next and last speaker, I think, is Terry Duryea. Terry, do you want to turn it?
Oh, does it work both ways?
There you go.
Oh, great, okay. Well, hello, Commissioners. I'm Terry Duryea. I live on Oak Meadow Drive, 5 houses up from Roberts Road. I also happen to be the president of our Small Homeowners Association. I'm impressed with the quality of the questions, the depth of the questions, so I'm going to try not to repeat much of that. I do want to acknowledge the applicant and the steps they've taken forward. I think, and they've reached out to us as they've indicated. I really do appreciate that. And this started even before anything was presented to the Planning Commission. I'm going to focus on this cow wall. I'm going to focus on the cow wall because that has, I'll come back with a couple quick comments on the massing, but this is what I want to talk about, and I'm speaking for myself and also for Art's neighbor, the second home in, Reshma Rao. So she couldn't be here tonight. She had a family emergency. This is a picture that she gave me that she got off the website. And I'll just speak for her, but this nighttime light spill, I'll speak for her and me. This nighttime, I'm using the words out of the report, the nighttime light spill intrusion of the neighborhood is strong on both sides. You only need to look at the photos in the consulting project that was the consulting architects project. If you looked at those in color, you saw how bright it is. And this comes off of the website. At night, that's going to be out there. You're going to have something that is this glow on the horizon for the first few homes. If the intent is to put star jasmine up there, why are we putting this fancy cow wall if you're going to cover it up? It seems inconsistent to me. Also, if we're going for a LEED platinum certification, using the high ceilings is not consistent with that, because high ceilings are a lot more expensive and use a lot more energy to heat and cool. Enough said on the cow wall, but you can see that it is bright. Ears are glow. You're going to have a glow on the horizon. The massing, I think they've taken nice steps forward. All I would offer there is, with the story poles in place, it still looks large. Other people have been more specific. I think they've done took a couple steps forward with the plans they presented. I think they need to take one or two more steps.
All right, other questions? There are not, so thank you very much. We're going to take a 5-minute break now, and then when we come back, we will ask the applicant to conclude with up to 5 minutes. Okay, we will resume our meeting, and we're now with the applicant having the concluding in up to 5 minutes. So we look forward to hearing from you.
Okay. So, I was really hoping that, you know, this cow wall seems to be very contentious, and I don't know how to convince you other than my little demonstration. I probably should have brought in my mega flashlight, but it would still produce the same, essentially the same result. It diminishes the light exiting quite a bit. I'm not going to argue that it doesn't glow. Of course it glows, but so would any window covering. When you drive home in any neighborhood, when people pull the drapes, what do you see? You see the windows with the lights on and it glows. Is the light coming out? No, it's being blocked for the most part into a dim element. And I think to make that stairway glass, as Mr. Cannon has recommended, will dramatically affect the privacy. It makes it very difficult to put, you know, we're trying to put a freestand. The elevators are glass tubes, and we're putting a freestanding stair that circles up, very dramatic. To put curtains there is just not going to work, so we would leave it as open glass if that's what gets decided tonight. I also wanted to make the point that you know, the underground parking is what it makes this project work for us. If we didn't do this, we would be doing something like all the others, and I have photographs of the other 3-story condominium projects that are equally in height across the street, next door, and so forth and so on, would that have a very ugly grade level, of nothing but garage doors. Can you imagine 12 garage parking for 12 cars all along the front facade? It's not going to be very nice looking. And then we'll go 2 stories above that. That's what's been approved, and that's what's in the neighborhood now, with maybe 8 or 9 foot ceilings overall. But that's going to get us right where we are today. It's a non-starter, and really for us. But I've been given the signal. We'll completely scrap this design and go back and put garage doors along the whole street. It's a traffic nightmare, no place to park, you know, it's just nothing but driveways. And that's what exists across the street if we've walked the neighborhood. Something that we're willing to do here for art next door is if we turn the roof element so that it'll probably, and then lower, take off 2.5 feet plus another 3. That's going to drop that wall 5.5 feet facing him. That's a tremendous amount of readjustment, and we'd be willing to do that tonight. I'm not Mr. Dealmaker here, but it's important that the neighbors, you know, are happy, and we'd sort of like to have a conditioned approval. We're absolutely willing to bring it back to you to share, you know, the results of the changes, but maybe have staff sort of take a look at that. So, if I have a little bit of time left, one of the investors would like to say something. Is that okay?
Thank you, commissioners and neighbors, for being here today. I wanted to point out that
pardon me, could you say your name again, please?
Sure, Jordan Castillo, one of the partners in the project.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you
I have
again.
your card here.
Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I wanted to point out that one of the things that we did, based upon the last Planning Commission meeting that we had, was to address privacy, remove the third story due to massing, create some sort of differentiation between the units, and also use a sloped roof. And one of the takeaways that I got from that, especially in talking to the neighbors, was the fact that if we were to address those issues, we would receive their support. And graciously, they have provided a lot of support, and I appreciate that. I think one of the issues here that we're having, the main issues, is the fact that the sloping roof has caused only a 1.5 foot height difference at the highest point and a 7.5 height difference at the lowest point. We would be definitely open, and I think I speak for everyone, for lowering the roof to being a flat roof, and that would create a 7.5 foot cut along the top. So that differentiation would, I think, grow significantly. But the reason we did the sloping roof portion was because it was suggested that we put a sloped roof to make it, I guess, more compatible with the neighborhood and things of that nature. So we're definitely open to taking it out if you would be fine with us having a flat roof and doing things like that. And the height, it's not because of a financial reason or anything like that. I think the spaces that we've created and we've designed beautifully, they're very open. And when you have a
I hate to do it, but I'm
problem.
going to have to cut you off. I'll let you have a couple minutes extra, but you're going to have some questions. But I want to suggest this. Two of you have now spoken, and so the questions could be answered by either one of you or as directed. So I think Commissioner Birch has a question.
I actually have a couple, but I'm going to break them up as needed. I want to thank you for this suggestion. I have a couple questions concerning that. I understand, to be clear, that on the lowest point, there would be a 5.5 foot differential from the original design to that. Is that correct?
If, let's see, so 1.5, 2.5, and then we're not lowering the entire thing.
No, I'm only
but
asking about
the wall,
that point, right now, the
that
lowest point.
Yes, that lower point, yeah, because I believe the differential is 10 to 13 feet as proposed, and so that is a 3 foot plus the other 2.5, that's 5.5 feet of lowering the wall facing the neighbor.
Okay, so from the original height, 5.5, which essentially gives you the 3. Okay.
It's 3 feet and 1.5.
Oh,
Well, it would be, we had 1'7", and then 5'6" is a 7 foot overall height drop facing the neighbor.
so then at the highest point of each unit, what height, what elevation would that be?
Add 3 feet.
So,
How high is the tallest building?
this is where I wish we had a pointer.
Well, it's going to be, we're going to take off 5.5. No, I take that back. I'm sorry. 2.5. 2.5 feet lower. So 2.5 plus 1.5, we'll say, is a 4 foot drop from its original peak.
And the original peak height was 34.
3411, I believe.
So we will be bringing the height of the structure down to right around 30 feet. And right now, it's at 33.2 at the highest point. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
30.
And so it'd be 30,
Sorry, these.
yes.
Yeah, you're right. I do have 33.4.
I think it would be 30 foot 10,
So 30 foot, 10
30 foot
inches.
9, something like that. I think it's going to be in that range to the very peak of the roof. 30 foot 9.
Okay. Can I ask a follow-up question, please? If you can check on A6.0, I have a question, constructability on this.
You want him to look at his plan, is that right?
Yes, I'm sorry, if you can please take a quick look at A6.0 of your plans. You can use mine.
You can use mine if you want.
Okay. It's going to seem minutia, but when you get to this point with your neighbors and everybody, every small bit counts. I would like to understand why the second floor subfloor is 1.5 feet thick, whereas on the first floor subfloor, it is much thinner. What is the reason for that?
That's a very good question, and that's because when these modules come out, they don't come out, they're modules, so they have a top and a bottom, every module.
No, I understand that.
Yeah,
So what you're
there's-
telling me is there,
That's,
Two modules.
all right.
yeah, so there's a floor on the upper floor, and there's a ceiling on the other two, and where traditionally we might see 12 inches.
Yeah, exactly.
We're getting the 12 inches for the span, but we're also getting when these come out, there's a lot of torsion that comes out. They need that diaphragm in there to hold it together, so it has a floor and a ceiling on every module, and
Yeah.
that's why it adds up in the
Okay,
center.
that makes sense.
Okay.
Well, that's because that's just a floor. This is actually going to be a
Let's let
construction.
Commissioner
concrete.
Birch finish.
No, so I actually do have other questions, but it's on a completely different topic, so I'm
Okay,
going to
we'll
let
come
people
back to you.
continue with their
Commissioner Hughes
elevation.
has a question, I think.
Question about, sir, question about the cow wall.
Yes.
Is it possible to intersperse the translucent blocks or curves with opaque curves that do not transmit light in or out? In other
I
words,
think
could
the
you-
answer is
could you
yes.
achieve a band either with a cow wall or with some other material? Could you put some solid bands?
Yeah. Hear my hesitation, just from an architect standpoint. What I would probably do is not band it. I would probably just lift it, take out some of the floor.
You could.
I've thought about this a lot. It's really painful. I think Park gets it, when it's your design, it's,
I
normally
understand.
I'm bending a little here, but this is,
I understand that there's a difference of opinion with Mr. Cannon. I also understand that the idea of windows would transmit more light than the cow wall.
certainly.
However, I also did a calculation that there's significantly more area with these curved light wells than there was in the previous design. I came up with almost 3 times the area on the stairwells. So I think that there is a trade-off going on, and there will be a significant amount of light with the new design. So I'm looking for an idea about how to reduce the amount of light that might occur through the cow wall. And one way to do that would be to intersperse translucent bands. Another way might be to reduce the area or the shape or things like that. So I'm not trying to come to
Got
that
it.
conclusion, but I'm looking for a solution that would reduce the amount of area of cow wall.
and that's, again, we proposed what's called a green screen. It's not something it's an actual product that you purchase and they custom make it in a curved form. This would grow the vines up and mitigate tremendously the amount of light going out. Light's really not going to go through the leaves. I mean, leaves will glow if you put a flashlight behind them, but again, it adds to that reduction. And I submit that from the inside, it's not going to look like I don't think I could do it, actually. I probably would.
For me, I would probably need to understand some quantification of this, or a solution that would involve replacing some of the translucent with opaque.
Well, we could do photometric study. I don't know if you have in your mind, a level that you want to reach of number of foot candles.
I don't,
at
but
the property
I
line or
believe
something.
that there would need to be a significant reduction on the order of, in my mind, 25 to 35%.
I think we're getting that from clear glass.
No, of
Oh.
the of the amount of cowl wall that's transmitting light. That could be achieved by bands or reduction in size or other things. To me, that would be a significant reduction.
So I wish I had the right answer to you. My hunch was we reduced the amount. You're telling me it's 3 times the amount. There's a big discrepancy in there somewhere. And I think Park was kind of with me that we actually cut the amount of cowl wall down from the previous design quite a bit. You know, with all due respect, I don't know the answer to that because I didn't, you know, calculate it. But
I was confining my analysis to the east and the west sides of the building. I was not looking at the front or the rear. And I was looking at the amount of light, of window space as compared to the cowl wall in the first and the second. And I measured that it was about 2.8 times the area.
it's easy enough to do. So I guess for you, the green screen is not adequate to block the glow, if you will.
In my mind, I don't understand how that quantifies. So
yeah, it's a you know, organic structure, and it changes every day probably as it grows and moves with the sunlight.
I think we can
I
stop there. I think we understand both of your points at this point. And Commissioner Janoff has something to say.
Yeah, just along the line, following up Commissioner Hudis's questioning about the cowl wall changes, perhaps. It strikes me that the issue regarding the neighbors' concern about light spill could be limited to, if you think of, if you envision the curved cowl wall, you've got a center line, and to the right of the center line, that portion of the cowl wall is the light that the neighbors are going to see the most. And from the center line toward the front of the property, that cowl wall is not going to be as visible to the neighbors. So my question is, along the lines of reducing the amount of cowl wall, but still keeping a light in that elevator well, and without breaking it into bands, which I think, in my opinion, would be architecturally inconsistent with the linear design that you've got, which I think is very attractive. Could you limit the cowl wall, curved wall, to just, well, effectively a quarter of that circle? Pull it in so that the visible light is still providing light to your interior, but it's not providing a light intrusion to the neighbors.
I think that's an excellent idea. In a sense, if you look at the floor plan, how it's recessed in already, so we're getting a little bit of that effect right now, because as you know, that round form is sort of injected into the building. So that said, absolutely, I would have no problem in pulling back the sides. I just don't like striping it.
I agree that striping would look odd. And in regard to the green wall treatment, you could still keep the green wall across the entire surface of that wall, which would be a nice way to soften that sort of long block of whatever the material might be that the neighbors would now be seeing, not cowl wall.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay,
Thank
are
you.
there other questions? Commissioner Hudis.
Yeah, this is a different matter. This is about a tree. Tree number 4 on, let's see.
Why don't you just borrow my set? That way you make it easier for you. If I-
I'll get you in there, Jordan. Now I need you to, because you have good young eyes. Tree 4. This one up here, I think.
Sheet number L1.0.
That one? Okay. Tree 4, the redwood.
Yeah, tree number 4. It was it remained on the previous design, I believe, and I believe it's slated to be removed on the current design.
I don't think so.
It
it was-
looked to me like it might be possible to save it on the current design, but when I look on, take a look at sheet L 1.0,
It's
tree
about
number 4, which is a 20-inch redwood in the arborist report, it was in 90% or excellent condition. And at least on the plan that I'm looking at, it shows it being removed.
Yeah, just the way it's drawn there, it appears like, maybe you could keep it. I'm not adverse to cutting trees, it's not what I love to do, but its survival would not, it's very, very, very close to the edge of a very large foundation going downward, plus the, behind the foundation would be drainage, and the roots would just wreak havoc on that.
Well, I mean, if you look in the neighborhood, you'll see numerous examples of architecture that has been adjusted for large heritage trees. Just across the street, there's a medical office where there's a cutout, I believe, for a large oak tree. It's something I would think would improve this project is if you were able to retain that particular redwood tree. It was on the previous plan not removed, and it's showing removed on this one. So again, if there's any possibility of saving that, I think that would improve the project quite a bit.
If we can get an arborist to give us a thumbs up for saving it, I don't see why we wouldn't. But if an arborist is going to say, that survival is slim, notching, not.
Let me stop you for a second.
Yeah.
I think I've heard this, and I've heard the requests, and I've heard you say you would seek the advice of an arborist on this point. So let's leave it at that for a moment, because we're going to wrap this up shortly in a nice ball. But before I get to you, Commissioner Hanson, I think Commissioner Birch said she had some other questions.
Yeah, I do. I have two questions, please. Originally, when you came in front of us at CDAC, there was a great deal of conversation about this being a green project, and I see you've got the Cal Green, everybody has to do it, checklist. The platinum isn't here, so I'd like to talk through, if you could please briefly explain to me the solar units that you're going to use, and if now that you do have this pitched roof, because originally you had a pitched roof, then it went away, and now it's back. Originally, you had some plans a long time ago you talked about water retention off those roofs to reuse for the irrigation on the property, and if that is still something that now that we have this pitched roof, you are going to consider doing.
We're definitely going to consider doing it, absolutely. As far as putting the solar in immediately upon completing construction, we may not do that. We might just make it solar ready. We're not quite sure yet, just depending on the cost of everything. But our goal is to be as close to being Green Point rated as high as possible.
Well, solar ready has a lot of definitions. So are you telling me that you're going to have the meter and the disconnect and everything in place so that all a potential buyer would need to do is to buy the actual panels and plug them in?
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, you're on tape saying that. Okay. And then my second question is, I do want to return back to this discussion about the mechanical unit. Because of the proximity of the site to the neighbors, I still want to go back to what my concern is that something is going to be stuck in these backyards or on these terraces where they become, here we are working on your height and the light disbursement, and then all of a sudden there's a noisy unit that gets stuck outside of each unit. So can you, I realize you say you haven't thought about it, but I honestly find that hard to believe. If you've gone to the work of trying to figure out how high a ceiling should be for resale, to say I haven't actually thought about how I'm going to cool the units seems a little off to me.
this is sort of a delicate thing. A couple weeks ago, when we were continued, Brad, who spoke ahead of the meeting, described the great depths that we go through in engineering a building, only to have it thrown away and then we start over again. There is a little bit of that I feel too, and so I think you bring up a very good point about if we're going to have condenser units, which are noisy. Other cities, have setbacks for these. Not a bad idea to sort of put something like that in there, get a decibel rating at the property line. Kendra, I got to tell you, we haven't dove in that deep, just because we don't know. It's something that we need to do, of course. We do have those mechanical spaces down in the floor that should work just fine.
I don't want a loud exhaust fan then sitting next to a neighbor. So to speed this up.
If we were to approve this, and this is a question for you and I guess for council too, could we so limit the approval so that it specifically provides that?
That's exactly what I was just going to ask him.
Go right ahead.
So are you?
You don't have to ask him.
Well,
He told us we can condition it.
out of politeness, I
I'm
normally
getting a little
say.
tired of the back and forth, so you can be polite if you want.
Please do. Please do.
Go ahead, be polite.
This is for you, Dan.
Never mind. I guess I heard you. Thank you.
We are definitely open to mitigating any sound or anything that's going to be caused by mechanical units.
Okay, Commissioner Hanson.
I was hoping you could put back up the sketch you had with the different roof slant.
Let's see, is it this? Here it is.
Okay, so my question is, most of the discussion was talking about the roof height and the total height of the building, but then I saw on the right-hand side that you had written 10.5 and 9. So as part of this, that you are willing to reduce the height of the first floor to 10.5 feet and the second floor to 9 feet?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Because there's an awful lot of things to like about the project, as many people have said, and the height was one, and so it looks like you're willing to compromise, and that's good to hear. So.
Yeah, it's a pretty big jump, I think, but we're absolutely willing to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Kane has a question.
The town consulting architect had an issue with neighborhood compatibility, and I was thinking, there are no estates in this neighborhood, and this is called Creekside Estates. We could make it more compatible by calling it Creekside Really Nice.
Is that a question?
Done.
Would that be acceptable?
I
we're not
seconded
going
that
there.
motion months ago.
We're not doing that. We are not going to talk about the name of the project.
And did you know that there's a Creekside
And
unit?
we're not going to entertain that. The do you know is not a question.
It is.
the
This
chair
one is.
not going to recognize. Okay, any other questions?
Yes,
If you have a real question,
I do.
ask it.
I do. Do you know that there's a Creekside unit down the street from you?
Yes, Barry Swenson developed it. It's a
I
series
didn't know
of
if you
mobile
knew it or
homes,
not, so
and
you're okay with that?
I'm not the namer.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay. Are there other questions? If not, thank you very much. We're going to close the public comment of the hearing. And now I'm going to ask for comments, suggestions, motions. But first, I think we have made a number of more than suggestions. I think my understanding of what a lot of people have said is I would probably do this if this were to occur. And I think it's important, certainly for the staff, that we decide what we want to condition this on. But we have to identify it, because if, for example, we were to say, if you do these things, and we see that you've done these things, because we're now talking from something that hasn't been done yet, we would approve it. So it's important that we identify those things. So I don't know whether staff should take a stab at it at the moment first, to find out what they've heard us say. Is that satisfactory to the commission? Okay, go ahead, please.
Well, I would say that there's a number of things I think that have been suggested. And so it comes down to whether or not you're comfortable with some of these things. Could be just conditions that are subject to the discretion of the community development director prior to the issuance of a building permit. The big ones we heard were whether or not there's support to changing the roof pitch so that they all are angled the same way as was illustrated on the overhead. The other one was reducing the second floor plate, the low level, to 9 feet and the first floor plate to 10.5 feet. So that takes effectively 2.5 feet out of the height as well. And those were the two big pieces. I would just note that for any mechanical equipment, they have to meet the noise requirements. So we always look at location and then obviously the specifications from a noise perspective. So town code requires that. The other would be any specific condition relating to the cow wall, whether it's what Commissioner Janoff suggested or some other.
Well, I think Commissioner Janoff suggested it, and it was accepted. So I think that should be part of the conditions. And Commissioner Hudish, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just had a couple others. And I would agree with the ones that have been suggested. One would be to retain redwood tree number 4.
Now, previously you had said, if possible, and his response was they would talk to someone, an expert about that, and I assume that meant get back to us on that. So if you're going to make that a condition, you're assuming that he doesn't have to find out whether the tree will die or will otherwise interfere with the foundation.
Well, the foundation shape can be changed.
Everything can be changed, but we have something before us that isn't changed. So I guess the question I have is, he had offered to find out, if you're saying you're not going to approve the foundation unless it can save the tree, you could say that.
Yeah, I am suggesting that.
Okay, well, now we'll have to find out how everybody else feels about that. So,
I mean,
anyway, we'll put that down. What else?
The other one I had was to use best efforts to provide solar capability on the roof.
I thought he said he would do that.
Yeah, but it wasn't articulated.
Oh, okay, fine.
So I'm
It
adding
wasn't
that.
best efforts. He said he would make it, I think as Commissioner Janoff detailed it with him, and that's how we would condition it. So he said the homeowner would merely need to plug it in, as I understand it. So yes,
Okay.
that should be a condition.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Hanson.
I didn't think we got a revised terms and conditions from the original hearing on March 22nd. Right, okay, so then the two things that I thought of on top of that were the green screen was suggested, but it isn't currently in the terms and conditions to provide further protection from the light emission to the neighbors. And then the idea of the color differentiation between the, slight color differentiation between the units was not in the original terms and conditions, but they had agreed to that.
Other things we may have missed? Okay, so let me ask this question, because I think, as far as my recollection of the discussion, the only one that I'm uncertain about is how we condition the saving of tree number 4. I don't know that there's enough evidence in the record to suggest whether the tree can be saved or not. But that may be simply that I missed something. So, Commissioner Janoff, you have your hand up? I'm sorry, Birch.
Staff, could you please remind me, we just recently did go through the ordinance for the trees and shrubs, and I believe there was a diameter one. There were trees that we identified as the best way I can place this is non-essential to save on the valley floor, and then there were diameters identified associated with those. Can you remind me if a redwood was one of the ones that we were not going to be identifying as a required to try to save, and if it was a 24-inch diameter that we had identified?
So I will look specifically, but the large protected trees are 24 inches in diameter generally for those, and so I will pull the actual ordinance out to make sure we have that specific information.
And if I do recall correct, a redwood was not under that. It was for the hillside, but not for the valley floor.
And was this 14 inches or more? I forgot.
20 inches.
This one was? While he's looking that up, Commissioner Badami, did you have something?
Well, I'm in approval of the project with the modifications that we just made, so I'm happy to make a motion.
Okay, let's wait till we get the answer to Commissioner Birch's question. If that's satisfactory to staff, I don't know if you can do that now.
So actually, there are a couple species, specifically any oak, California buckeye, or madrone that's 24 inches or greater, and then every other species you have to be 48 inches or greater to be determined to be a large protected tree. So this is less than half of that size.
Okay, that being the case, Commissioner Hudis, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm willing to withdraw, although I would strongly encourage the applicant to look for ways to save that tree by working with an arborist.
And I think that would be fine if we state it that way. Yes, Vice Chair Kane.
I was just going to say, that's what the applicant said. Leave it up to an arborist. That seems fair.
Yes, I like both of your language, the idea of taking your best effort to save it, and that probably would involve an arborist's opinion. Are there other questions or comments? If not, Commissioner Badami is going to hazard the motion.
All right, I move to approve architecture and site application S-16-070, 30 Roberts Road and 6 Forest Avenue, subdivision application M-16-009, requesting approval to demolish one multifamily dwelling with 3 units and one single-family dwelling, construct one multifamily dwelling with 4 units, and merge 2 lots into 1 lot on property zoned R-M-512. I can make the required findings for CEQA. I can make the required finding for density in an RM zone. I can make the required findings by the Housing Element Policy HOU-81. I can make the required findings for the issuance of a demolition permit requiring architecture and site approval. This is made in consideration of architecture and site applications as required by Section 29.20.150 of the Town Code, subject to the modifications as identified by staff in the conditions of approval. I can list them, but I think you listed them quite well for us.
The only other one would be the affirmative findings for the subdivision application, which are contained in Exhibit 16 on page 2.
I'm sorry, exhibit what?
16 on page 2.
Correct. You can just reference those.
Okay, so I would add that to the motion.
Great.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Okay, Commissioner Jano. There's a second, and I think Vice Chair Kane had his hand up.
I'm sorry, did we have any language on the LEED Platinum promise from the applicant?
There was not, it's not possible to promise that you can achieve a certain level, first of all. And second, I think that he spoke to green building standards as the requirements, which is what we require folks to fill out the checklist for.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there other comments or questions? All right, we have a motion and a second, so I will call the question. All those in favor signify. Apparently, we are unanimous. Now, let me just, as I understand the motion and what we just approved, it's not coming back to us. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for everybody being here. And that will conclude that, and now we'll move to, pardon me? Appeal rights. Oh, appeal rights.
Yeah, so anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision to the Town Council. Forms are available in the clerk's office. There's a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
All right, now we have a report from the Director of Community Development.
Thank you. I'll start briefly. Last week, the Town Council considered Forenza Pizza, which was before the Planning Commission. Ultimately, they
Could
approved.
I ask you all to go outside, please? We're still going. Park?
Mr. Sloan.
Park Miller.
Mr. Miller.
Go outside.
They considered Forenza Pizza and approved the beer and wine service for that establishment. Bella Vista ultimately was not heard. The applicant requested during the meeting a continuance, and so that will be continued out to August, I believe, 15th, if I remember correctly. Just wanted to also announce for anyone watching or listening, the town is going through a number of policy and or code amendments. You guys started reviewing the cellars. That will be coming back on the 28th. The policy committee has been reviewing the visibility analysis requirements in the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines. They will next review that on June 26th. They will have a meeting for that. We will be bringing back a new fence ordinance that was part of the council's strategic priorities, probably the second meeting in July for your consideration. And then we hope in August to bring forward new accessory dwelling unit, what we currently call secondary dwelling units. We need to make changes to comply with state law for accessory dwelling units, and that we imagine will come back in August. And with that, I would defer to Mr. Schultz to see if he has an update for you.
So just this afternoon, we received a decision from the court on the North 40 case. I'm still in the process of analyzing that and trying to process exactly what the judge said or didn't say. In a nutshell, though, the town is required to set aside the denial of the project and reconsider the project pursuant to the Housing Accountability Act, a certain government code section that requires that affordable housing projects or of this nature look at the objective standards. Basically, what the judge said is, as I read it, is that the town did connect the findings with the substantial evidence requirements, so we met that finding, which is always good, but he reached to the conclusion that the findings that we made relied on subjective policies as opposed to objective policies and the requirement of the Housing Accountability Act that requires that. So we've got to go back and look to see if we can find other policies that would be objective that would allow for the denial of the project. Otherwise, the court says you must approve the project. So that's where we're at. I'm going to be scheduling a closed session with council to decide what give them advice as to what their options are and what we can do moving forward. So that's where we're at. It would not come back in front of Planning Commission, though. It would go directly to council. So.
Yes. Mr. Janoff?
Is there a time frame within which a response is required?
So you have 90 days from the 17th. It's actually, even though we got it today, since it was by mail, there's an additional 5 days from the date of mailing, which was the 12th. So it starts on the June 17th, and 90 days from that date is when you'd have to file an appeal. There isn't any requirement of when we set the hearing date, but if we just sat on it and did not even schedule it, I'm certain that the petitioners would be right back in court demanding that and seeking even sanctions. So they give us enough time. I would say that time frame would probably be sometime in August or September, maybe even September, because of the summer holidays is when we'd have to schedule this for a hearing.
Mr. Hanson?
So did I hear right? The council looking at it again is in essence an appeal, or is there an appeal process aside from them?
The appeal process would be appealing the Superior Court decision to the Appellate Court decision. So having 3 judges that sit on the Appellate Court of the state of California would hear argument again that the Superior Court did not get it correct.
So there is
one possibility.
There is one possible option besides looking at the objective standards and trying to tighten that up.
But during an appeal, there would not be a stay.
No, there would be a stay on this specific project. So if council or if the other side decides for some reason to file an appeal, it stays the project until the appeal is heard. You could make a motion to not stay the project, but that just doesn't happen in a development project, because if we were to allow the project to go forward and then we to prevail on appeal, what do you do with the project? So it would stay it in all sense.
Let me understand then and I realize you really haven't studied it. I've got a copy of it. I haven't studied it. But I was just curious, let's assume that the council says, okay, we're going to go ahead and see if we can satisfy what he's requested us to do. How much time does the council have?
there is no set requirement. Like I said, I've reached cases where the petitioners or the developers have gone into court and said they're stalling, they haven't held hearings. But if we go through the normal process, which we can show how long it took last time to get through that process at council, which was, I believe, 3 or 4 hearings, as long as you're making progress, the court will give you that time frame. But there isn't any set time frame that you've got to return and have it done by at this point in time in the decision. Now, the developer could go into court and ask you if the court could set actually deadline dates. But that's probably something that I would, if that's council's decision to come back and do it, is to work out those dates so that the developer is okay with those dates, and it's dates that we can make, kind of like we did when we extended the dates for the MAP Act and for the Permitting Streamlining Act, to provide us with enough time to go through it.
Other questions? Commissioner Hughes.
This isn't a question about that matter, but it's another commission business.
Okay, well, let's
related to
conclude
that.
this then and move on to your question.
So, my question or my other business is, that the General Plan Committee and the Planning Commission made recommendations about amendments to the North 40 specific plan. I believe that work was concluded months ago. Some of those recommendations may be obviated by the recent court decision and the town's decision. But there were other recommendations that are independent of Phase 1 that reflect the will and the motivation of many, many residents who spoke with us at numerous hearings. And I wanted to really just ask the question as to what's happening with revisions to the North 40 specific plan, and ask that before other applications come in that might reflect this, could we please get moving on the amendments that have been suggested and made as recommendations both of the Planning Commission and of the General Plan Committee.
I'll step in. So council sets staff's priorities. Obviously, we're going to have a conversation. Currently, the matter is tentatively scheduled for August to go before the council. However, this decision may change the path of that, and so we'll have to wait and see what council directs and when the mayor sets that ultimately for a hearing.
And I can tell you from my standpoint, it certainly changes that path, because you would not be able to be looking at, the council looking at in September, changes to the specific plan instead of looking at the reconsideration if they go to that path. And it's very sticky in the fact that one of the reasons is that, yes, there might be some that are independent, but some of them are not. And a perfect example is one of the ones was to consider allowing for units on the north end not to be above commercial. And now that if in fact we're not able to find the objective standards and this project moves forward with 270 units, you don't want another applicant coming in trying to use even more units up and have even more density than we expected. So it's a very complicated issue of how we mesh these two together. But council, in our last meeting, we had many speakers at public session, and we are scheduled to bring it in August, but how it interrelates with the work now that we have to do on the reconsideration is going to be a monumentous task.
I understand from my perspective, having participated in all of these processes, I think it's very important.
And I would not worry about other applications. I've heard that, and that is not a concern from my from a legal standpoint. 2/3 of this is owned by Summerhill and Grosvenor and is tied up. The other 1/3, if a project actually came in that we had tremendous concerns about, we could put a moratorium on and stop any other development because of that, if that was really a concern. But we really don't have anybody that knows what to do out there until this decision is made on this project. And certainly any changes we make aren't going to affect the project that's in place. So from a legal standpoint, I don't see that as if that's the impetus to we've got to do this right away because we're afraid of other applications. I don't see that risk being out there because we have other tools we can use.
All right, any other questions or comments? If not, I think we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.